Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit.
Welcome all you citizens of the world. Once again, it's Michael James and the Live from the Heartland show coming to you from the very blue and wonderful 49th Ward in the great, great city of Chicago in the great state of Illinois. We're proud to be a Chicagoan. We're proud to live in the state of Illinois. We have progressive politics more so than a lot of other places, and we're going forward trying to make this a better world. Today's show for the week of September 19th, recording a couple days earlier, I have a return of the All-Chicago Tenant Alliance, a couple of people representing them to talk about the tenants' rights movement, give us an update. And then we're going to go up to Michigan once again to see our good pal Paul Draus with a roundup of news and info from the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan. Paul has a book out, a new book out. We'll talk about that a bit and see what's happening in our neighboring state. All right. In memoriam, the late Robert Redford now. Wonderful actor, a wonderful human being, did a lot of good in the world. We loved his films. We liked him a lot, and we're sorry to see him pass on to the great spirit land, but that's the way it goes. One good thing that my wife Paige brought to my attention was that Bernie, that's Bernie Sanders, has been in West Virginia talking to Trump voters. I think that's good, and more kind of progressive folks ought to be talking to those people on the other side of the aisle, so to speak. A note of some sadness in a way is that the Roman Susan Gallery, and they've appeared on the show, is going to close at the end of September. As many of you living up in here in Rogers Park know, the Roman Susan Gallery on Loyola, right near the train tracks, was right next to Archie's Cafe. Loyola bought the building, that's Loyola University, and Loyola has terminated everyone's residence. So Roman Susan Gallery will continue after that doing programs from other places, but you may want to stop by. They're there every late afternoon on for a while until the end of the month. I was looking at an email that I got from Common Dreams, and they do a lot of interesting stuff and good things. And a couple of things they reported was that XP, I don't know how you pronounce that, Lee, has won a special election to fill the seat of the assassinated Democrat Melissa Hortman of the Minnesota legislature. And some of you will be very much aware that while Trump is touting and trying to turn into a martyr this fellow who was killed, this right-wing influencer who was recently killed, and Trump called for flags at half-mast up there in Minnesota. When Melissa Hortman was killed, Trump didn't even call the governor. We have to really stand up to this attempt to turn him into a martyr. Some interesting news also from Common Dreams and all over the news today is that Jerry Greenfield, one of the founders of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, has resigned from the Ben & Jerry's board. As you might know, Ben & Jerry's was sold to Unilever, and they were supposed to be able to continue all their progressive advocation, and that hasn't been true. Unilever, who bought them, is once again selling Ben & Jerry's in Israel, which had stopped. And I don't know if I'm going to get Cherry Garcia anymore. And I know I'm not going to get Dove soap, and I'm looking to get Duke's mayonnaise instead of Hellmann's. Those are products that are owned by Unilever. Speaking of Israel, today I saw that 16 nations have warned Israel against attacking the Gaza-bound global flotilla. A lot of boats are heading that way with supplies that are desperately needed. And we'll keep you abreast of what we learn about the flotilla in weeks to come. 100 people more were killed, adding to the 65,000 already killed in Gaza. And Israel has launched a large-scale ground invasion. The United Nations came out this week saying it is clear that the UN Commission finding confirms Israel committing genocide in Gaza. To do nothing is not neutrality, said the head of the commission, it's complicity. And there's been a lot of complicity in Israel's attack on Gaza. The U.S. is probably the most responsible. And some of you might know that there was a boat that the U.S. military shot out of the water, killed 11 people down in Venezuela, claiming it was a drug boat heading to the U.S. A lot of consternation around that, and they attacked another boat yesterday. Here in Chicago, there's been a lot of concern about ICE and the potential bringing in of the National Guard against the wishes of our governor and most of our people. The tribe here in Chicago has let me know through an email that the Department of Homeland Security and their Operation Midway Blitz has federal agents being spotted all around the Chicago area. They've been detaining and arresting people heavily in the suburbs surrounding the city. And they have video accounts of people being arrested in Elgin, West Chicago, Joliet. And as you know, someone was killed the other day in Franklin Park when they claim he was trying to escape and was dragging an ICE officer with them. That's a lot going on, and we will certainly hope that we can resist that in a lot of ways. Trump had seemed to back off about coming into Chicago with the National Guard, but then yesterday, which was Tuesday, the 16th, he started talking up coming into Chicago again. So we will see. We're going to take a short musical break, and we'll be right back with members of the All-Chicago Tenants Alliance to give us a little update on the tenants' rights movement and what they've been doing. Okay, stay tuned here on the left end of your dial. We'll be right back after a little bit of music.
When it comes to the people, when it comes to the children, when it comes to the countries, when it comes to religion, why can't we have peace in this world? Why can't we have peace? Why can't we have peace in this world? Why can't we have peace? Say no to the fighting.
Say no to the fighting.
Say no to the war.
Say no to the war.
Say no to the violence.
Say no to the violence.
Say no to the unkind words. Say no to the judgment.
Say no to the judgment.
Say no to the blame.
Say no to the blame.
Say no to the fear of needing to change.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of September 17th. And I'm really glad now to bring on a couple of people and one new person. Two people were on the show not too long ago from the group All-Chicago Tenants Alliance, and they would be Miles Bennett Hogarty and Maya Odendahl. And joining them, and the first time I've met him, is Hassan Dustar, and they are involved with the group All-Chicago Tenants Alliance, and they caught my attention, having been involved in some rent strikes in my youth with Join Community Union and Rising Up Angry. I read about a rally that was taking place down on Broadway, and I went down there that day, and there were probably 50, 75 people giving support to people who were on a rent strike. And for those people who don't know, a rent strike would be withholding rent until certain demands, concerns, issues are addressed by the owner of a building. And so good day to all three of you. It's good to have you on the show. How about someone starting off and telling us a little bit about the All-Chicago Tenants Alliance, how it came to be, and what you do?
Sure. So ACTA, the All-Chicago Tenant Alliance, originally formed out of a tenant union in and of itself. We were tenants organizing under a landlord named Mark Fishman in Logan Square, beginning around COVID and up until around 2014 or so. And we came into challenges and sticking around most of us got booted out one way or another, and we opted to organize outside of Fishman, and using a theory that we were developing called the intra-landlord organization, where we organize under one landlord. We basically grew into ACTA, developed into ACTA, and now we are an organization of tenants that go out and try to organize other tenants in the city, looking to form them into tenant unions and militant tenant unions that will fight for more control over their housing. And just as you said, Michael, one of the sort of key aspects of the way that we organize is organizing around the rent strike, which is what we believe is the most effective weapon that tenants can utilize in combat, more or less, against their landlords.
What rights do tenants have? I mean, what are the things that you would advocate for or ask for when you're trying to organize a building, or when you've been invited in to help organize a tenants union?
I can talk a little bit. So yeah, thanks for having us. But I guess tenants' rights in Chicago are really not super strong right now. What we've seen is that the on-paper rights that tenants have to withhold rent or to do like a repair and deduct, keep their rent back in order to make repairs in their apartments. These types of things aren't really protected when it gets to court. A lot of times landlords will just, ignore the fact that the tenants are doing what's known as illegal withholding, and they will put kind of the pressure on the tenants to bring them to court. And this might take the form of like evicting the tenants, and then the tenants have to prove that they were in the right. In any case, the burden is put on the tenants. And we really think that like the tenant's real source of power is the fact that they give the rent to the landlord, just like the landlord's source of power is that they're the ones who control the homes. So tenants need to be really taking that power into their own hands and using their rent checks in order to basically enforce their rights.
What are some of the historical antecedents for this that inspired you? I know that we had a collective bargaining contract through Joint Community Union that the city, I believe, kind of recognized at that time that, the landlord did come to an agreement with us. But when I'm thinking about rights, I'm wondering how long, if a landlord wants to throw you out, how much time do you have? And how many times do you go to court? Is it 6 months before they can throw you out? Or any information on that?
Yeah. So tenants do have some protections around evictions. If you are being evicted, you have a first day to show up at court where you can either have a lawyer, but if you don't have a lawyer, you get put into contact with a lawyer who may or may not take your case. Then you have another day at court where things kind of get figured out. You may have another day at court, and then finally a trial. So those are kind of the main few things. There's also ways that these get like pushed down the road. Tenants have the right to request a jury trial, which can make things take a little bit longer because then discovery comes in and there's time for negotiations. What we've seen with striking tenants is that I think it's been around like 6 months with kind of a group strategy, thinking about the court strategically and how to buy as much time as possible for negotiations, for things to happen. So yeah, it can take a little bit of time if you're prepared for it and ready to use it strategically.
Have you seen any variation on the behalf of any judges? I mean, some being more favorable than others?
Yeah.
Similar issues?
Yeah, I mean, kind of recently, I'm sure Mike can go into a little bit more detail, but, we got assigned, working with one of our unions, the Belden Sawyer Tenant Association, we got assigned a pretty poor judge in the case that was kind of newer to the situation and newer to this kind of law, and sort of expedited the process relative to other judges. I would say for the most part, judges in general are not quite favorable when it comes to this kind of conflict in court. And for the most part, landlords, due to the cost of court, are pretty incentivized to settle and negotiate with the tenants outside of it. So, in our experience, there is the looming sort of prospect of court always, but for the most part, these things sort of end outside of it.
I know there's been some activity up here in Rogers Park. It took me a while to figure out they had a different name than ACTA, but clearly you've been in contact and involved with them. And I'm just wondering, what do you have going up in Rogers Park, which is home base kind of for this show, and around the city? How many tenant unions are there, and what kind of activities are going on right now?
Yeah, I can talk about this. There's quite a few tenant unions around the city. The one that you came to the rally for in Buena Park, they're tied with BSTA, and they're kind of coming to their close. We have a tenant union in Austin, which just won some negotiations. They got a few things that they were hoping for in their demands. But the ones in Rogers Park, which are the kind of big ones that we're looking at in the next couple of months, this is Fuerzas Activas de la Damen, or Damon, the street. And these are tenants that we've organized. So when we organize a building, we try and get them to think about the name of their own union, and sort of in the same way that you might have like locals. So they're connected to us, and we share resources, and we go to their meetings and help them facilitate good meetings. And but also we try to encourage tenants to be able to take on the organization by themselves. And part of the reason for this is because when the immediate fight is over, we want the union to keep going. Mm-hmm. We want to be able to step away and still have them coming to us and strategizing, but also being able to run their own buildings union. And these buildings in particular, it's really like mainly tenants from 4 buildings, but there is a 5th building. These are all buildings with mostly Spanish-speaking tenants. And this landlord named Imran Khan bought these 5 buildings and immediately sent them letters that he was going to be raising the rent by hundreds of dollars, like $600 to $800, depending on the unit. And we believe that this is part of kind of a gentrification plan that he has for Rogers Park. He's been buying up buildings up there, and he's looking to, as he says, renovate them. He's said multiple times that he's looking forward to a beautiful new Rogers Park. And he's kind of using this strategy with the alderwoman to kind of say that he's going to be a force for new, good kind of development in the neighborhood. But in reality, what he's doing is he's making it unaffordable for the people that live there. So these tenants have told us and have basically, the reason they're organizing is that they won't be able to afford these rents that's coming up. So although he is not literally evicting them, he's sort of doing this kind of implicit eviction by raising the rents to a level which he knows that they can't afford. And in fact, he bought the buildings knowing that he wouldn't be able to make profits at rents that these tenants would likely be able to afford. So he's looking to basically turn these around and gentrify is our main kind of idea of his motive.
Well, it clearly is a gentrification move always, and real estate kind of controls a lot of what goes on. I recently at the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fair ran into some former employees at the Heartland Cafe, and I asked where they lived, thinking they were living in the neighborhood. And they said, no, we've moved to Evanston. It's cheaper. And Rogers Park has always been a gem, and a lot of people didn't know about it. We have real mixed incomes up here, as well as diversity and race and ethnicity, et cetera. And it's a challenge right now. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm wondering how many organizer types do you have involved in ACTA these days? And how have your skills developed in organizing new tenants unions?
Yeah, we have around 13. I think that's accurate, something around there. Pretty hardcore organizers that are, spending a huge amount of time outside of work during the weeks on this, with a especially kind of hardcore core 7. And you know, through running these rent strikes, I would say our skills have developed quite a lot in the city. You know, there's big differences between something like Fuerzas Activas in Rogers Park than like Fuerzas Inquilinos de Broadway y Kyler in Buena Park or BSDA. You know, there's a big difference in the character of the tenants as well as the situations. But I think, you know, overall our skills in sort of organizing have developed a huge amount thanks to the rent strike method, more or less, where we're really bringing the fight outside of the courts, outside of you know, delegating it to the hands of just the lawyers, and really kind of forced to take the impetus on our shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would add that, like, in addition to the 13 or so, maybe
it's
13
something
to
around
15,
there.
like, kind of core members. There's also like a varying group of people who join us. So on any given kind of Saturday, we might have like about 20 to 30 people going out in different parts of the city on higher days of participation. And these are people that we're trying to use like internal programs in order to, you know, help people get into the knowledge of what we do and how we think about these struggles.
Real briefly, because I want to get to Hassan and the stuff that he's doing with you. How broad is the tenants' rights movement around the country? Any other places where the stuff is going on?
Yeah, it's pretty broad. There's, you know, larger projects in Kansas City and LA, but I think sort of the one of the kind of problems about the movement is that you know, tenant organizations will spike up in times of crisis here and there all across the nation, and sort of die down once this crisis ends. So there is broad popularity and broad organizations across the nation and the world too, but it's kind of a problem of lasting.
Let me ask a question of Hassan Dostar, who's been very patient here. My understanding is you are working on an internal bulletin for the organizers and a little bit beyond of the ACTA movement. Can you tell us a little bit about your international bulletin?
Yes, for sure. And thanks for having us on. I'm a member of ACTA, a general member, and I work with another comrade to write a weekly publication about news from around the world. There's no shortage, of course, of messiness that the United States government is involving itself in regarding, you know, interfering in Venezuela, carrying out genocide in Palestine, propping up various unsavory dictators. And so also there are many changes happening on the global stage that we feel as an organization that is organizing working class tenants, it's essential for our members to know about, and increasingly important for tenants to know about as well. So we write this publication to give analysis and to provide reading recommendations and really to stay in touch with the world that we're all fighting to transform.
Who can get it and how would they get a copy? I'd love to see it, to be honest with you.
So currently it's shared in our chats, group chats, but we could definitely send it to you. And okay. I think we will, as it develops further, we will definitely think more about how we distribute it to a wider audience.
What I'd like to add to Michael is that you know, there's kind of two simultaneous publications happening in our organization: the International Bulletin and Tenants Talk, a newspaper that we talked about last time on your show. And slowly, you know, the content is being mixed. So you'll see a lot of this stuff in Tenants Talk as well.
Great. Let me ask you as we go out. I would imagine that the buildings that you're working in, which are largely Latino and Spanish speaking. What other issues, you know, things don't happen in a vacuum. It's not just tenants. There's also jobs, there's the economy, there's healthcare, and there's ICE and immigration. We got about a minute left. Can anyone address how the ICE raids have influenced tenants in your buildings?
I can talk about it a little bit. While there hasn't directly been any interaction with ICE, as far as we know with tenants that we're working with, we do have tenants like in Fuerza Cincuentanos and Broadway Kyler that they had family members in other parts of the country picked up. So we helped raise legal fees and raised $10,000 with them for their family members at a block party a couple weeks ago. On the other hand, we also think that tenant unions, even though they're kind of still forming in Chicago, we've seen in places like LA that tenant unions really can coordinate and do ICE actions against ICE and protect people. LA has coordinated watches, and because they're organized, they're able to go into the communities and really be effective, be there without just kind of a voluntary basis. They have kind of a way of keeping track of who's supposed to be where. And this is something that we hope to achieve.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming on. Hassan, it's good to meet you, and it's good to see you, Miles and Maya.
Great to meet you.
And we'll have you back not too far off, because I know you're active, and we like that kind of activity. And we want to share it with the masses far and wide. All right, everybody, stay tuned on the left end of your dial or however you're getting live from the Heartland. We're going to take a musical break, and we're going to come back with our next guest, who's a longtime pal of Live from the Heartland, lives up in Michigan, Paul Draus, a little bit on what's going on in the great state of Michigan to make it greater. Okay, we'll be right back. Thanks, you guys.
Can't you hear the church bells ringing? Can't you hear the choir singing? It is time for love. It is time for peace. It is time for war. And hate to cease. You see the children in the schoolyard.
Okay, you citizens of the world, all of you, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of September 19th. And it always brings me pleasure to bring on this regular visitor to the show now, the one and only Paul Draus. And Paul Draus is not only a soccer player, an activist, an author, an artist, and a sociology professor at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. He's a longtime associate of this show. Back in the day when it first started being broadcast over the WLUW from the Heartland Cafe, Paul and I were both hosts and sort of producers of the show. And I've asked Paul to come on as regularly as he wants to share whatever's on his mind or he thinks that we ought to know about. And one of the things that I thought we could do to start off this session would be to invoke a memory of the time he made arrangements and brought the incomparable Studs Terkel up to the Heartland Cafe for a wonderful interview we had. And I don't know if that interview is on the YouTube site or not. It should be. We probably have it recorded. We do have some nice photographs from them. I took some, but the best was by Carla, Paul's wife, and we're going to try to have that, get that to Hal, our engineer, so he can post it along with this little rap. So good day to you, Paul. It's great to see you out there in the Detroit sunshine. And how about telling us about the time you arranged to bring Studs Terkel to the Heartland Cafe?
All right, great to see you also, Michael. And wow, that's going back a ways. You know, my memories of Studs Terkel go back to really the early 1990s when I was still living in Wyoming, and I wrote him a letter asking, if he would be interested in meeting me when I came home to Chicago on a Thanksgiving break, because I was at graduate school at the University of Wyoming. And he called my parents' house because I left my parents' phone number outside of Chicago, and he left a voicemail message. I wish I still had that message. He's like, yeah, I just read this letter by a guy, Paul Draus, and yeah, I'll meet with him. He sounds good to me. I talked about like how him and Nelson Algren had come to take on like almost like I sort of developed almost like a familial sense of ancestry with these writers and this sort of tradition of Chicago literature, and sort of this, which also had a lot to do with kind of the social conscience of Chicago, I guess you would say. And nobody represented that more than Studs Terkel. And so I actually did go and have lunch with them like on like a Thanksgiving break in like, I don't know, in 1991 or something like that. And we walked because he didn't drive or anything, so we walked, like I met him like at the radio station building, which is the classical station. What's the call numbers, Michael?
98.7 WFMT.
Yeah, FMT, that's right. And so we walked over to some like a steak joint or something. And I think he had a martini at lunch, and we talked about the primaries. This was in the middle of, tell us what year it was. It was the year that Bill Clinton was running as a Democratic candidate. The Democratic primaries included Tom Harkin, at that time a Republican from Iowa, and then there was
No, he was a Democrat from Iowa.
Sorry, Democrat. That's what I'm saying. Now they're all Republicans. Back then, yeah, and a very progressive Democrat.
Yeah, I like
a labor Democrat, and then there was also a Democrat from Nebraska who was Kerry, not John Kerry that ran for president later, but what was his?
He was a governor or a senator or something.
Yeah, he was also a Vietnam veteran, lost part of his leg or something like that. Anyway, I remember we were talking about this primary, so this must have been 92 then, or 91, going into 92. I don't remember. Anyway, so I had met him then, and then when you and I started working together, this was a couple years later when I was back at Loyola, I had also met his editor. It was a woman named Sydney Lewis who wrote a book about Cook County Hospital. I met her through like a mutual friend, and she worked very actively with Studs as his editor. She would work with him when he would do all these interviews, his oral histories, and she was the one that would sort of take those tapes and stuff and like, and kind of like transcribe and edit them down and things. And so she was very, very close with them. And so when we were trying to look for like a really special guest for Live from the Heartland, was it like for some special occasion that we were trying to get like a big guest? I don't remember, but
I remember you got him.
Yeah. So yeah, he was very personable. I had to go pick him up from his house that day. We arranged it through Sydney and talking to Studs on the phone. He was not like a big email guy, I don't think. And I went to his house in Uptown and picked him up there and brought him over to the Heartland and dropped him off, and he kind of like hobbled into the Heartland, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, we have some nice pictures and good memories of that time. I did get interviewed by Studs Terkel. I don't know if it was before or after that, but it was in my coming out of my ultra left wing phase and being a little new agey with opening the Heartland Cafe and, a lot of new ideas. And I tried to kind of mix spirituality and left wing politics. I don't think he ever used that interview. And I don't know.
It's in a vault somewhere.
But I was somewhere, once I was in touch with Sydney about trying to find it.
Yeah, okay.
Enough on Studs Terkel. He was a hell of a guy. He's still an inspiration for all of us who listen to the radio.
Well, hey, listen, I mean, he was a big inspiration on me and even becoming probably a sociologist because, the stories that he captured and the way that he approached history and trying to understand history from like the ground up, trying to understand the perspective of different people, the sort of the deep listening that he did, it was literary, but it was also deeply, deeply sociological. And so, yeah, I have a big debt to him, but I mean, he's a Chicago legend also. So,
Well, let's switch topics here a little bit and go to Detroit. I've always liked the city of Detroit. When I was a kid, I rooted for the Detroit Lions.
mhm.
I had a neighbor who had moved from Detroit, and I looked in the days of Rising Up Angry. We were allied with the White Panther Party and the late great John Sinclair, and we also knew about the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. There was a lot of great stuff happening in Detroit. Detroit then has had some rough times. It's I think on the back of your book, someone in talking about your book, Forging Identity, which we'll get to again, referred to Detroit as a battered yet hopeful city. So my hope is that you will come on the show regularly, once a month or so, with something you want to share, whether it be about a book, whether about some political activity or whatever. You're a busy guy. You're involved in a lot of things. So how about socking it to us with some solid information about the mayoral election, the governor's race, Senate races, and whatever else is on your mind. On your mark, get set, go.
Okay, so like Michigan, for those of you that don't follow like Michigan politics, we have a Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who's term limited, so she's not running for re-election. So we have a governor's race coming up next year, and that's already heating up. So you've got a number of people sort of vying for the governor's seat. And it's a little bit complicated because the race includes not only traditional sort of a Republican who hasn't been identified yet, I don't think, as a nominee, because of and there's no strong front-running Republican yet, and a Democratic primary, but also there's an independent running, a very prominent independent who happens to be the current mayor of the city of Detroit. So the current mayor of the city of Detroit is a guy named Mike Duggan, who's kind of like a machine politics guy going, back decades in the city of Detroit, but was elected the first white mayor of Detroit, elected in more than 2 decades, was elected in 2013, and he's had a very successful run as politically for sure as mayor, pretty much unchallenged. People have tried to run against him. Nobody's come close. The first time he ran, he was knocked off the ballot of the Democratic primary because somebody else got on the ballot, who had a name similar to his. Something happened. No, he was knocked off the ballot for some technicality and not having enough signatures. He actually ran in the general election as a write-in candidate. And even though there was like another shadow candidate with a name that was spelled exactly the same, except for one letter to try to confuse people, he still won as a write-in candidate, over a well-known African-American sheriff. He's still the late Benny Napoleon. He won by a pretty decent margin, and then he's been pretty solidly reelected ever since then. And he's done a lot in terms of kind of right-sizing the city's finances and stuff like that. Now, a lot of it he benefited from other things taking place. There was a bankruptcy, there was financial management. A lot of things were done to the city of Detroit that kind of enabled him to enter in with a sort of a clean slate in terms of some of the finances and things like that. But he's done a lot. He's seen as a successful mayor here for getting a lot of things done. And the population of the city of Detroit, this is the big measure of success in Detroit, is has the population stopped declining, right? Detroit used to be about 2 million people. It dropped to less than 700,000.
Wow.
And so the measure of success for every mayor since then has been, when will the population stop dropping and when will it start increasing? And there's signs that may have happened now around 650,000 people, right? But now he's decided to run for governor as an independent. He wants to take this sort of reputation for fixing Detroit, quote unquote, and being, he's been a Democrat his whole career, but he's sort of trying to make this move to get away from like the polarizing politics of our time, I guess you'd say, and also appeal to people statewide who sort of look at Detroit and say, oh, what a success story. Mike Duggan is the guy that fixed Detroit. Obviously, he's a white candidate coming out of Detroit, and to see if he can parlay that into success at the state level. Word is he has a pretty good chance. He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of name recognition and so on. But you also have the current attorney general, sitting attorney general, not attorney general, sorry, Secretary of State, Joyce Benson is running. She's probably the front runner on the Democratic side. And then we don't know who the Republican will be yet. So that's going to be a really interesting race to watch, both in terms of Michigan politics, but also what it might mean for national politics to have like a state with an independent winning, the governor's seat, possibly.
Well, that might be a tack that a number of Democrats take, is to run as an independent. I'm wondering, your personal view, who would you prefer? A lifelong Democrat running as an independent named Duggan, or a Democrat who's currently in the government named Joyce Benson? Who are you rooting for? Who would be more progressive, or you think do more for more people?
Well, I mean, in this case, I don't know that either one of them would be particularly progressive by that measure. We can talk about the senatorial race where there are some genuine progressives running, at least one. I would say that I would probably go with Benson as my preference. And this has more to do with sort of intra-Detroit types of stuff and my views on Duggan and so on. But I would say I'd probably choose either one of them over whatever the Republicans come up with. And I think Duggan would probably be an effective, competent governor. But, maybe I don't agree with everything he's done in Detroit and so on. But, yeah, so that would probably be my just looking at it right now. And I haven't, this is, I know a lot more about Duggan than I do about Benson, actually. So maybe it's because I just don't know a lot of, Benson's. I haven't gone into the weeds on looking at her positions and so on. She has been effective Secretary of State and has, the main thing that sticks out for me is around elections. She's done a lot to firm up and solidify the election process here, which was under assault after 2020, as you remember. So we actually have very effective absentee ballot system and so on.
You mentioned the Senate race. That's going to be important. The Senate race all over the country. We're hopeful that somehow we could squeak through with a majority. We meaning a little bit to the left of center. What do you got on the Senate race there? Who's running and who is the candidate you think would be the most, let's say, progressive?
So on the Democratic side, and you've got three main candidates that are running. The top two are, one is Haley Stevens, who's really a very mainstream Democrat, who's kind of probably the favorite of, the sort of the Schumer, Hakeem.
No endorsement, Dami, guys.
Right. Yeah. So and she has been, progressives have called out the support she receives from AIPAC and so on. So Haley Stevens is probably the most centrist Democrat. I think she's the front runner, but a close second is a guy named Abdul Al-Sayed, who's actually a physician and a PhD in, I think, epidemiology. He used to be the director of public health for the city of Detroit. And then he went on to host a podcast called America Dissected. He's very progressive. He's very smart. He's very charismatic. I mean, the big, challenge he faces is his name is Abdullah Sayed, and he's running a statewide race. And so I think a lot of people have questions, even though he's running a close second and he will go anywhere and talk to anybody. And I think when people listen to him, he's got the support of Bernie Sanders. He ran for governor, against Gretchen Whitmer a few years ago. And obviously he didn't prevail, but he did well enough that he got a lot of notice nationally. So he's like the number two. And then there's another state senator named Mallory. It's a Mallory Mick something.
Oh, good enough.
Mallory McMorrow. Yeah. So, and actually she's probably, like on the outside right now. she's a state senator whose probably politics fall somewhere in between Al Sayed and Stevens. I think she's more progressive than Stevens, but not as much so as Al Sayed. But I think right now she's sort of running behind him. Her background is really interesting too. She came out of the private sector. She was a car designer. She got into politics in part as a reaction to the first Trump regime and saying, basically, we have to do something. I have to get involved in politics to try to, correct things and try to, become more engaged, right? So actually, she's kind of more in the vein of like I'm just a regular person getting involved in politics. I'm not ideological. I just want to get things fixed. But in terms of her actual politics, she's probably more progressive than Stevens is. And she's sort of like the guy in Maine has a similar tack to this. Graham Plattner. I don't know if you've been following.
Yeah, no.
Following that. So so her thing is like, I come out of the private sector. I'm a mom. I'm this and that, but I really just want to fix our politics and get this. And she's of course she's Democratic, obviously pro-democracy, and
well, I'm sure you'll keep us posted on our future chats.
And I'll pay more attention as that heats up. This is, but we're in 2025. This is all for 2026. The most immediate election in Michigan is the Detroit mayoral election, which is happening in November. So Duggan is not running again, but he has sort of anointed Mary Sheffield, who's the current head of the city council, longtime city council member, daughter of a very prominent minister, Horace Sheffield II, whose father, Horace Sheffield Sr., was also a very, very prominent, reverend or minister in Detroit. And Detroit politics and religion are very closely aligned in the Black community. So she's a strong front runner as a mayor. And it looks like she's probably almost, she's running against another minister named Solomon Kinloch. But I think his name is Kinloch, but she's probably a lock for the mayor's race.
Let's go to Dearborn and the city council. Now, Dearborn has a very large Arab Palestinian population. Everyone might remember back to the most recent presidential election when, Dearborn, a strong Democratic stronghold, were PO'd at Biden, and a lot of them went for Trump. You mentioned there's some kind of the mayor of Dearborn shut down a local Islamophobe in the city council. I think we're hoping that Dearborn does go Democratic again. Fill us in, Paul, on what's going on in their city council.
Yeah, so our mayor here, and it's a small enough city that I know him a little bit because I sit on like a commission, economic development commission for the city of Dearborn. He's a young guy, grew up in Dearborn. He's of Lebanese heritage, Muslim family. His name is Abdullah Hamoud. He was a state senator before. He's very, very, like I said, he's very, very smart. He has a master in public health and a master in business administration from the University of Michigan. Very dynamic state senator, became elected mayor with a strong majority. There are a couple of people running against him, I think, this fall. I don't know if any of them have a chance. But in the presidential election, of course, the big issue here was Gaza and Biden's anemic response to, Benjamin Netanyahu's assault on the people of Gaza. And so a lot of people were very, very frustrated by that, including the mayor. I don't think the mayor never met with Trump. He also refused to meet with Trump or Trump's people because he didn't think that, that Trump, he didn't think that Trump was serious in wanting to be a president of peace. But they did make that pitch in Dearborn that Trump was the president of peace. They had big billboards up. They tied Kamala Harris to Israel. They did all kinds of things like that here. And so I think the end result was that, and Dearborn it's about half Muslim, a little more than half Muslim Arab people. Not all the Arab people are Muslim either. But, it's Lebanon, Iraq. There are a good number of Palestinians here. They're not a majority. Yemen, there are a lot of Yemeni people here. They're a significant percentage of the overall population, more and more politically involved. And so in 2024, they voted for Donald Trump by a plurality. He didn't win over 50%, but you had, the sort of the spoiler candidate in there too, who got about 13% of the vote.
Well, what just happened on your city council?
So, and this was just on a local, like Instagram and on the local news. There was a street in Dearborn that was named, you know how they put up the honorary street sign to honor like a prominent local citizen?
Yeah.
There's a guy here who's a local journalist. He runs the Arab American News. He's very, very highly respected here. He's a proud, Arab American, but a proud American, a patriotic American. I mean, and so this was actually a decision by the county government to approve naming this street after this prominent local journalist. And this guy showed up at a city council meeting and raised objections to it and said it's basically like calling the street like Hezbollah Street or Hamas Street or something like that. And so the mayor was very strong in sort of shutting him down. Basically, it basically said, I understand that you live here, but we'll be happy when and if you move, because you don't represent the inclusive community that we want to build here, because the guy has a reputation apparently locally for standing outside of mosques and saying things. So, I mean, I guess I say all that to say that, the mayor here has not been shy in asserting, a strong viewpoint in terms of the type of place that he wants the city to be. And also being critical of the Democratic Party as well. Like he was very critical of the, Biden administration.
Paul, we're running out of time. We have a lot more we'd like to talk to you about, but we're going to invite you back next month. I want everyone to know that you have a new book out called Forging Identity, and it's about an artist named Carlos Nielbach, and it's got beautiful little drawings that you did, and people can get it if they want. It's the University of Michigan State Press.
Michigan State University, yeah.
I know that you probably are conflicted about whether you root for the Bears or the Bulls or the White Sox or Detroit. We could talk about some sports next time. And
I heard that the Lions just trounced a certain.
They did. They killed the Bears.
Chicago.
It was very depressing if you're a big Bears fan. We're running out of time. I got a few things I want to share. Thanks to Paul Draus. Thanks to the people from the All-Chicago Tenant Alliance, to Hal James, our engineer, our producers, Katie Hogan, Lynn Orman, and Tom Clark. I want to let people know that last week we interviewed Grady Chambers on his new book coming out this month, Great Disasters. And we had Gene Bryan on talking about a celebration this Sunday, the 21st, down at Montrose Beach by Dog Park. And it's to celebrate Sunday, SUN space DAY, solar energy. And that's from the group Third Act, Illinois. I'm on my front porch on Sunday, 1509 Lunt, with photos, and my exhibit, La Frontera, El Paso y Juarez, is up at the Yuri Eichen Gallery by appointment through October 24th, and there'll be a closing gathering on October 24th at 6 p.m. That's a Friday. You can call 312-852-7717, 312-852-7717, or email gabbyfish@hotmail.com to set up your own little appointment to see my beautiful photos. Enough said. All power to the people. We see you next week. Over and out. Thank you for watching the Live from the Heartland show. New episodes air every Friday beginning at 9 a.m. Central Time. Episodes air each following Thursday on CAN TV, 9 p.m. in Sweet Home Chicago on Channel 21, or streaming everywhere else at cantv.org. Audio episodes go live on WLUW each Saturday, 9 a.m. on the left end of your dial at 88.7 FM, or streaming everywhere worldwide at WLUW.org. They're available on Apple and Spotify podcasts by looking up Live from the Heartland on either platform, and are also broadcast on Lumpen Radio each Friday at 9 a.m. on 105.5 FM and streaming at lumpenradio.com. I'm Michael James, and I'm glad to have been your host. Until next time, remember, do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Over and out.
Come to limb. Are you doing the best you can? Tell me, are you doing